Welcome into the Atlanta football party. I'm Jarvis Davis. Coming up on today's show, Georgia got a taste of their own medicine.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Football Party. This is, like we said, your favorite show and the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk anywhere because it's local insight you can't get anywhere. We're right here at Locked On. I am Tenitra Batiste, and alongside me are Brent Rollins and Jarvis Davis. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And guys, Alabama was throwing haymakers at Georgia all day in the SEC championship game Saturday. And the last team to beat Georgia exactly 728 days before that happened, beat them again. So we'll go between the hedges to talk about if we think the committee got it right in their playoff team selections as a result of championship weekend. We'll talk transfer portal and chop it up all about all SEC selections. We'll also talk about what's next up for UGA. But first, let's talk about you guys' takeaways from the Dawgs. Disappointing loss to the Titans. Brent, you said you had two. Georgia wasn't Georgia from that opening kick, and they didn't dictate the game on offense like they could have and should have.
Yeah, the biggest, like you said, opening kick. Like he kicks it out of bounds. Like so it's one of those things where what have we seen from Georgia during the winning streak? You've seen attention to detail, lack of, one of the least penalized teams in college football, turnovers in big games, not necessarily being, for the most part, not being an issue. Missed a field goal, penalty right before the field goal that pushed it back even further. Like all of those things led to Georgia beat Georgia as much as Alabama beat Georgia in this game, I think. But secondarily, we talked about this all year. This was an offensively driven football team, and they had playing with the lead plays to the strength of their team. Yes. And they had an opportunity. They got it early, but they had an opportunity to me to really put the foot on the gas late first quarter, early second quarter, things like that. And they just didn't, and they couldn't. And Alabama, in essence, outfoxed them, outcoached them, executed them, all that stuff in the middle part of the game. And then the pace of the game, the rest of the game was Alabama's pace, and it stayed that way.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we talked about this last week and how, what were some of the keys to the game. And one of the things I mentioned was I felt like it was one of those games where Georgia could win it two ways. Georgia could win it close, or Georgia might just blow out Alabama. But I felt like for Alabama to win it, it was going to be close, and it was going to be sort of some, for lack of a better term, some hairline missteps that were going to just work in Alabama's favor because Nick Saban was going to have his guys ready. Now, what I didn't expect, Brent, was just exactly what you said, because I thought both guys were going to play chess. And I felt like Kirby Smart was at a point in place in his career where he could play chess with Nick Saban, but he had the better chess pieces. I just felt like the chess pieces didn't quite move like the chess pieces were supposed to.
No, and Alabama, the thing about this season, I actually think Alabama is the only team that beats Georgia this season.
Agreed. Absolutely.
They are uniquely qualified from a talent standpoint and where their talent is. Corners, edge defender, size and the defensive front. Like they are uniquely talented to beat Georgia. And I think that's the only team that beats Georgia. Like if Georgia takes care of that game, I think the next two games they take care of quite almost easily in a way.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think it was one of those things where almost like, you say in so many instances where there's something big, right? There's some history to be made, but you've got one hurdle, and it just so happens to be the hurdle of hurdles. Now, if you get across it, everything else is a cakewalk. Problem in this situation was Georgia didn't quite get over the hump or across the hurdle. Now, Jarvis, you also said that it was because, and Brent kind of alluded to it there, so perfect segue, because Georgia kind of got a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah, because when you think about how Georgia has played all season, like one of the things that, we've been enamored by, we thought it's been kind of cool as far as a trend goes. Like, hey, they're taking their team best punch on defense from a defensive standpoint, and then they make adjustments, and then you don't see the opposing team offense for pretty much the rest of the game, and I think that's what we saw when Georgia came out and they walked the dog down the field, scored a touchdown. Kendall Milton, gets in there, and when you think about that score, and Nick Saban even talked about it after the game. He was just talking about how the adjustments that they make, and you just talk about, and I was amazed by that, because a lot of times coaches don't necessarily give you that much insight, but I'm sure Saban had respect for who asked the question. Roman Harper had asked the question. He was just like, yeah, we went from odd front to an even front. They started playing a little too high, and then hey, because they knew that their guys. Like Brent said, they had the advantage on the edge with guys like Dallas Turner getting home and being able to beat those Georgia offensive line. Like, we're not used to seeing it. We're not used to seeing those guys get handled like they did on Saturday. So I think that overall Georgia was in a space where, like you said, that was the only team. That was the only team that could potentially match up front, because we know how big Georgia is on those hogs, like the up front, from a protection standpoint, and from being able to get to the quarterback. So I think Georgia got a taste of their own medicine, and they just couldn't figure out a way how to combat that.
The Dallas Turner thing you mentioned, think about that. Like, that guy is likely the highest pick on Alabama's team in the upcoming draft. Latham maybe, like
sure,
McKinstry maybe, like they're going to be battling it out to be the highest draft pick. He played less than half the game because of the adjustment that you talked about. Dallas Turner played fewer snaps in that game than he did in any point in the season. There were 62 defensive snaps for Bama. He played 29. So because of that adjustment, they went with size, and they said, okay, we're going to just be big and prevent any sort of running game, and then just go cover.
Yeah. And because you can do that with the guy that you have out there on the edge, as far as from a coverage standpoint, those corners, like that's where they had the advantage. And like, Georgia hasn't seen that this year. So it was a really bad matchup. But, given how they played this year, the expectation was that, hey, they'd be able to, get through it. But once that ball kicked off, it was just like, it was a toss-up. It was a toss-up. And we saw that played out right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us thought that we would end that game seeing a stat line like 31 carries for 78 yards, averaging 2.5 yards per carry from this Georgia running back room, especially because Kendall Milton had about as good of a game as Kendall Milton could have had, or of any of that running back room on Saturday. But I don't, again, think that we would have expected even one of those running backs to not get to the 100-yard mark, let alone the entire running back room to not get to that 100-yard mark. So yeah, it was just one of those games where, like we said, and it's interesting because I heard someone say this, and not to make light of it, but I heard someone say that as they were talking to a fan that particular day, kind of watching the game play by play, that person said after, the opening drive touchdown, oh my God, this isn't good. This isn't good, because something told him, hey, we are just the opposite. When we score, when the other team, the opponent, scores on us, then we reset, and then we go off, like Jarvis said, and we just run the gauntlet for the rest of the game. This was the polar opposite, and somehow that fan felt like that was very telling about what this game was going to be.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's just not what we're used to seeing.
No.
And I think that some of the adjustments that were made in the second half of this game, just think about, Glenn Schumann and what they did, how they started off. Like, there was, they had an even front with the double spy, and they were literally saying, Jalen Miro, you can't beat us throwing the football. And I think that, you kind of bouncing back and forth between it, throughout the game. And I think that there was some certain times I just felt like you probably should have sent a little bit more pressure, because, you want to force, Milroe to make a decision, because those called runs ultimately, ended the game for the Bulldogs at the end. So I think there was some time and points where they could have made some adjustments, because, sending the pressure, from one side and forcing the roll, the opposite way, maybe preferably to the left since he's the right-handed quarterback. I think those are some of the things that you probably could have done, to combat, what was going on the field. So, and then also not allowing them to be able to run the football the way they did. I think that will ultimately, shut
And
Georgia
Mims going
down
out,
because
like Mims going
yeah,
out of game, like that.
Yeah.
It's we've talked about the sort of exponential impact he has when he came back. It's obviously to me an exponential loss when he goes out. Like that's the top 15 pick.
yes.
Yeah. Agree.
And that's another thing that we haven't been used to, right? Like George be like, oh yeah, Amarius Mims is out. Okay, Xavier Truss can come in and step in and be that guy, but not against Alabama
Yeah,
because
because
there's a difference.
yeah,
You see
it
the
showed
drop off in
itself.
games like this.
Exactly, because it showed itself as such throughout the season where it felt like plug and play, but this was the one team where plug and play just was not going to work. We're going to talk a little bit more about the game and some of the outcomes of fallout maybe from the game when we get back to talk between the hedges, and of course then we'll do a look ahead too. But first, let me tell you guys a little bit about Game Time. So you shouldn't have to worry when you're trying to buy tickets for your next big event. And I know that you're probably not that excited, Georgia fans, about going to the Orange Bowl. But if you so choose to go to the Orange Bowl and check the guys out against Florida State, check the Dogs out, there's a place you can get your ticket even if you decide last minute, and that is Game Time. It's fast, it's easy, and you can buy it not just for sports, but music, comedy, theater events near you or beyond. So with killer last minute deals, all in prices, you can view your seats. There's the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. So you can see the view from your seat before you buy. You can buy the tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event. And Game Time guarantee means you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will actually credit you 110% of the difference. And with zone deals, you pick the section, guarantee picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Actually, that's Locked On College. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, guys, let's do just a little bit more of a deep dive before we kind of move forward and kind of look ahead. So, of course, once you get to this point in place where you're like, all right, the three-peat hopes were dashed. SEC title game didn't quite go how Dogs Nation wanted it to. But I don't think anybody kind of saw, unless you guys would say otherwise, the Dogs dropping 5 whole spots to number 6 in the college football playoff rankings that were released Sunday. What that meant was that Georgia ends up in the Orange Bowl facing off against Florida State, dropped to number 5. Michigan, of course, jumped to 1. They'll face Alabama, who went from 8 to 4. In the Rose Bowl, Washington 2, Texas 3. They jumped from 7. They're in the sugar. We haven't had a chance to discuss it on this Atlanta football party, so I'm just going to ask you straight away, Jarvis, did the committee get it right?
Given how this season turned out, yeah, sure. I mean, because at the end of the day, like a lot of people don't want to admit this, but the SEC is the best conference in college football. I mean, period. Can you leave the SEC champion out? Can you leave a one loss, back-to-back national champion out? Yeah, when you you get the team that beat them. Yeah, of course you got to get the team that beat that team. You know what I'm saying? So I think that. But as far as the whole Florida State piece,
Yeah.
ACC has been down, y'all. Clemson hasn't been good, and that was the only person. That was the only team that was keeping y'all to some sort of relevancy in the in college football playoff conversation, and they just haven't been relevant. And and then Florida State, they are a team that was just bowl eligible last year. I know the college football playoff committee said that they do year to year, but that's crap because I feel like you give teams benefit of the doubt because you gave Alabama the benefit of the doubt. Like, hey, this is a team that's been before. This is a team that when they go play a Mercedes Benz for the SEC championship, they don't lose. Those are the type of things that you have to look at. So I think overall, I felt like you got it right to the standpoint of who can we justify not being in there by saying, okay, yeah, we understand that Florida State beat LSU. But, this as the conference as a whole, and this was a weird year because we didn't eliminate any conferences early on in the season because pretty much everyone had been competitive. And then you had teams that were undefeated and you had, those teams winning some out of conference games that would look good on your resume, like Texas. So I think that overall, yeah, they got it right. Because somebody was going to be mad because there are 4 playoff spots, and we're talking about Power 5 conferences being in. Remember, notice I said 5.
Right,
So
it's not Power
4
4.
versus 5.
Exactly.
Right.
There's going to be one conference champion not in there every year, guaranteed. So it was Florida State this year.
Yeah, and let's just be real, Brett. Like you hear people say, and I mean, to me, there's almost no wrong answer because I feel like every dog in the fight does have some semblance of an argument, including Florida State saying, well, if it's because we were down Jordan Travis, well, remember, Ohio State got in with their 3rd string quarterback and ended up running the table. So, okay, Jarvis, but I'm just saying that's what some of them are saying. Cordell Jones ran the table. And, and they ran the table rather with Cordell Jones. So, I mean, Brent, do you feel like with that kind of argument that Florida State is kind of putting forward that the committee still got it right?
No, they're 1,000% wrong. 8,001,000% wrong. And the reason they're wrong is because there was no right answer. Like there should have been 6. There are 6 teams this year that were worthy of being in a sort of playoff.
Yeah.
That's like Florida's like the fact that the thing for me is I can't imagine being one of those players for Florida State saying, hey, we went and played LSU in the opening game when LSU was basically, other than Mason Smith, at its peak health, and we trounced them. Like, you went and played at Florida, even with your backup quarterback, and won at Florida. You won all your other games.
Yes.
Like, it is a football team. It's not an individual. Now, did the college football playoff get it right when you consider what the playoff really is, which is a beauty pageant, invitational TV event? Yes, They got it right. They got 3 humongous brands and a undefeated champ that had 2 top wins, beat Oregon twice. Like, from that perspective, yes, they got it right. But there was no right answer this year because 6 teams, and to me, 6 has always been the best number.
Same.
But the crappy part is in the 10 years of the playoff, it really, like, there's sometimes where it's just 2. Like 2 would have been great. It just, each season is so different. And, now we go to 12. So, but no, I don't think they got it right. I think Florida State got completely hosed. And the interesting part is, I think if Georgia wins the game, Florida State is in. I think then the committee would justify saying, hey, look, the Bama win for Texas is a little bit devalued. Florida State's undefeated. They beat the had 2-0 in the SEC, and it's Georgia versus Florida State 1-4.
Yeah.
Like, and that way they get the Rose Bowl, Big Ten, Pac-12 type matchup. Like, who knows? But no, I don't think they got it right because I don't think there was a right answer.
Yeah, and I would have to agree on that one. I said to myself, this is the first time that they really got challenged in this college football playoff committee era of 4 teams or 4 slots, let's say, of 4 slots. Because like you, I'm not a fan of jumping from 4 to 12. I would have actually preferred a 6 as well. And I think 6 should have been in there a couple years ago. And I don't think we would have gotten to this point. I mean, yeah, you're always going to have
8
some
even,
argument.
like 8 for me.
And I was going to say, and I would have conceded with 8. Like 8 would have been a check off.
I don't think there's any more teams than that can actually win the thing.
No.
Not year in year out basis.
Right, which is why I'm not a big fan of 12. But because if you do 6, okay, yeah, 7's going to complain a little bit more, but they're going to complain a little bit less than 5 is going to complain. And then if you do 8, 9 is going to complain, but has even less of a leg to stand on than 7 and 5 would. But yeah, this is the one year where it's like, are you kidding me? Because I'll go back to this, Brent, and then we'll move on. Just like we said, Alabama is probably the only team who could have put Georgia on their heels. So if you had 6 slots, if this was a 6-team college football playoff, Georgia gets back in, and one of 2 things. Well, number one, they don't like rematches in kind of the early stages of the playoffs, so they weren't going to pick them first. But if they're coming back head to head, 2 things. Number one, Georgia's getting to the championship game, and number 2, I don't think Georgia's losing twice any more than they lost twice to them a couple years ago when they lost in the championship game for the SEC, and then they beat them in the title game. But it's neither here nor there. It is what it is, and we'll see what this conversation looks like with 12 teams next year. Anyway, Brent, it was a sweepstakes back in play. The transfer portal opened up Monday. Several players decided to take their talents out of Athens. Of course, the most notable departure, not shocking, but just notable, was Brock Vandergrift, but also D lineman Jonathan Jefferson entered early in the day. Offensive tackle Austin Blaskey wide receiver Jackson Meeks and outside linebacker CJ Madden all elected to enter the portal, at least as of last evening. I'm sure we're going to hear more of those names kind of come through today. But two things, did any of those entries into the portal surprise you? And are there any players that maybe you'd be surprised not to see enter the portal eventually for UGA?
No, none surprising. I think there's going to be more. And like, you're going to have to replace 30% of your roster, graduations, pro, portal changes. Like 80 people played 10 snaps. I think you're going to, right at about 30 that you're going to have to replace. In terms of not people that I would be surprised if they didn't go into the portal, like Arian Smith walked on senior day as a third-year player. I think like he would be one that, and maybe some of the situational things have changed and he decides to stay. But I think in terms of anyone leaving, no, I wouldn't. It honestly wouldn't shock me if anyone, because like there's been rumors about Micah Williams. Like it wouldn't shock me. None of it would shock me because I actually said this when NIL was created, that it wouldn't shock me that you get to a point where every player puts their name in the portal almost, at least, and even significant players, especially the really good ones. Just be like, okay, I'm gonna put my name in the portal. Maybe somebody will cut me a check for $5 million. Like
maybe I'll become Jermaine Burton.
You never know. Like because that opportunity is now there, nothing would shock me.
Right. And then two, in addition to what Jermaine Burton is able to say with him now going into the college football playoff with an opportunity with Alabama, you've got 3 quarterbacks who are now on their 5th season of college football play, who are Heisman Trophy finalists.
5 of the last 6 Heisman winners were transferred.
Exactly.
Bryce is the only non, because Tyler, Baker, Burrow, like all of them, Jaden, all of them this year. It is what it is now. That's what college football, free agency.
Yeah, exactly. It is the price. It's the currency in college football, right, Jarvis?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the crazy thing. Like, and the whole thing that kind of gets me is when people are surprised. Like, oh my God, Dylan Gabriel jumped in the portal. Why is he trapped? I was like, do you understand the type of money that's being offered? Cam Ward, the quarterback for Washington State. Now, Cam Ward's a top, but not like one of the darlings of college football. This is Wazoo, Washington State. He had 7 offers reportedly of $1 million to come to what said school. Like that is crazy. So don't be surprised, folks, that these guys are going for the money. Like if you were in that position to be able to leverage something like that, because like I'm amazed and I'm on the borderline jealous at the amount of negotiating power these college football players have today. Like, and I can't hate on it because to be honest with you, I wish I would have had some of it too.
Oh
like, and I ain't even talking about $1 million, $1,000. $500. Like what I do as a college student with $500 in my pocket just for being pretty good at football.
When I was in college, like we were excited as like the dance and cheer team to get like book scholarships. And I mean, I know it's not quite the same, but it is the same because a couple of days ago, I'm sitting with our coach, which we have a national championship cheer team from my alma mater, and we're literally talking about $250,000 endorsement opportunity for those 30 kids. And don't get me wrong, they don't need money because they're all like these pharmacy and like pre-med majors who are like, full ride scholarships, but think they don't want me going after the 250 for them? Hell yeah, they want it because they can. And do you think when I was a dancer, if somebody or cheered, or I cheered and somebody offered that to me that I wouldn't take it? Are you kidding? The answer is
nothing should shock you.
Nothing.
In college football, yes.
No, exactly. In college sports, period, we are at that point. Now, speaking of shocked, Georgia plays 6 players on the 2 AP All SEC teams that was released Monday. We got Brock Bowers, Cedric Van Pran Granger, both of whom were first teamers and unanimous first team selections. And then Tate Ratledge and Malachi Starks joined them on the first team. Javon Bullard and Nas Stackhouse were among those who joined on the second team. Who, if any, UGA players got snubbed? Who do you think, Jarvis? Anybody got snubbed?
I think that's pretty. I mean, when you think about it, I think that's pretty much on brand with where Georgia should be. I don't think anyone. Just thinking off the top of my head, no, I don't think anyone.
There's only really 2 possibilities, like Could you have put Carson Beck over Milrow in the second team?
Maybe.
Potentially. But Milrow had like 700 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns. Beck had none of that. So in their passing stats, yardage was a little different, but touchdowns, picks, all that, the sort of normal stats that voters like that look at, pretty similar. Kamari Lassiter, maybe as a second team corner, but he also did not have, plays in the football, INTs, so a lot of INTs. So it's just, I think it was appropriate.
Yeah. It's one of those where it's kind of like a style matters, for lack of a better term. And
and Ladd's on there if he's healthy all year. Mims is on there if he's healthy all year.
Thomas,
those kind of things.
Possibly. Yeah.
Thomas Johnson potentially if he's healthy all year. There's
for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of a guy that was, who definitely they missed more than we could even speak on. But listen, we will talk up next in terms of where Georgia goes from here, where some players might go from here. But before we do that, we're going to talk LinkedIn and about your chance to connect with Jarvis on subtext.
Listen up, guys. Jarvis Davis here for LinkedIn. This episode of the ATL Football Party is brought to you by LinkedIn. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to have many top tier candidates as possible to interview, because that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Job. LinkedIn Job has the tools to help the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And folks, like, when you're looking for a job, you want to definitely be able to go to the right spot. If you're looking to post a job, you want to get the best candidates, and LinkedIn Jobs is the place for both of those things. And it's another job board. They have a vast network, more than a billion with a B, not an M, B, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. And plus, I'm a small business owner as well. So I understand how hard it is to find good people. And they've even launched a feature that helps you write job description, making the process even easier. So here's what I want you to do. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, folks, I want to do real quick. Here we go. Free trial. You can join the subtext right here for Locked On Sports Atlanta. What you're going to get, you're going to be able to get text updates right to your phone with breaking news, rumors, all my thoughts on all 22 review, whether it be for the Atlanta Falcons. I need you to go there right now. Join subtext.com/Locked On Sports Atlanta, and you're going to be able to get a free 2-week trial. All you got to do, go there, and they're going to send you a code, and you can sign up. And then it's after the 2 weeks. If you don't like it, you can drop it. Or if you do like it, it's just $4.99 a month for subtext. So become a Locked On Sports Atlanta insider today by going to the website, join subtext.com/Locked On Sports Atlanta.
So, guys, it's the Orange Bowl for Georgia, as we talked about. They'll face off against Florida State. And there's some questions about who you might see and who you might not see play. So, got a couple questions for you guys. Brent, who do you expect to see play or not play in the game? And might that be a sneak peek into who might or might not declare for the draft?
Yeah, I would think Mims doesn't play. I would think Ladd doesn't play. Just get healthy and move on. Bowers is interesting just because of his own, neuroses, I guess, in terms of what he is and playing and what he's all about.
Right.
But I also think he's one who should go be healthy and go get healthy. Don't. So those are the three. Outside of that, because those are the three to me that are definitive picks, top 50. Obviously, the other two first round, and Ladd's just had health issues all year, so he to me should not. So those three are the only ones. Outside of that, I would expect to see everybody that doesn't transfer or go away or all that sort of stuff play.
How about you, Jarvis? Who do you expect to see play or maybe not play in the game? And do you think that might be a peek into who might declare for the draft?
I think Carson Beck should definitely play, because I think this needs to be his film. Like all the eyeballs that are going to be on this game because especially with Florida State and all the NFL prospects that they have up front. And I wholeheartedly believe that Carson Beck should take an opportunity to put himself on display and go to the NFL, because one of the things that, is going on in the NFL is that there is a lack of quarterback talent. And I felt like Carson Beck, showed that talent, put that talent on display as far as from being able to distribute the football to his wide receivers, different targets and everything. No matter who's in there, no matter who's healthy, he's been able to, sling the football around. And also, just from a arm strength standpoint, he definitely has that as well. And I think this is going to be an opportunity for him to put his talent on display to move on, because let's just face it, like all the guys that Brent mentioned, as far as getting themselves healthy, the old guys are gone. They're going to the NFL. You got a Marius Mims who's going to be gone as well. And it's going to be this offense is going to look very different next year. So I feel like this is the opportunity for him to say, you know what? I appreciate this year to be this opportunity to be able to, be the starter for Georgia, then bring home the natty. But I made myself some money by putting my talent on display, and I'm about to take advantage of it and strike while iron is hot.
Now, some might say, Brent, that's a good idea, obviously, to play in the Orange Bowl and give yourself one more opportunity, sort of like your final curtain call, if you will. But some may say as well, maybe you want to come back because this is a year where you've got a whole lot of talent coming out, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels, and might Carson Beck come back to improve his stock. But what is your read on where you think what he might do, A, in this game, and B, in the draft?
I tend to think he comes back, mainly for the reason that you said. But the interesting thing about him is I don't know that he's ever like top 5. I don't know what he could do differently, because what does the NFL in terms of picking that high do? They want people that not only sort of the throwing aspects, but also the playmaking skills on the move, out of structure, things like that. It's not really his game.
True.
But is he a guy who gets picked, say, 6 through 15, 6 through 20? I definitely think that. And that's a possibility. But in the end, I do think he comes back mainly because you could see a situation like look at this past year where Bryce, Stroud, Richardson go top 4, and then Levis doesn't. And then you get sort of everybody's like, well, it's not worth it, so we're going to wait till later. And Levis goes in the second round, so he can come back and say, hey, I could potentially be the number 1 pick, or be that. But his decision is obviously the ultimate domino. And how you. Because if he goes and now Vandergrift's gone, you're probably portaling. And,
because you don't know that you want to hang your hat on. You're
not playing freshman, or, maybe with Gunner, yes, but still, who knows? It's still the ultimate domino, and we'll see.
Indeed. Thanks for stopping by the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, and come back for the Hawks postcast tomorrow night. We'll see you then.